We should be ready. Can you guys hear me? All right. Thanks for being here. I'm John. This is how to get started in cybersecurity and other things that I can talk about in the next 25 minutes. I'm actually going to talk about some of the things that's already, some of the other panels have already talked about, so I may move through some of that a little bit more quickly. That's my Gmail. This is my mandatory who I am slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'd rather talk about other stuff than me. I'll reference this a little bit. I have a whole bunch of certs. I spent 5 years getting my 2-year degree. I didn't learn anything. So there's no wrong way to get started in cybersecurity. There's no right way. There are ways. Everybody has really different paths. My path originally started by secretly joining the Army when I was 19 and getting married without my parents knowing. Only one of those things worked out. So this was actually talked about at the first panel discussion. People say, I want to do something in cyber, I want to do something in cybersecurity. That doesn't actually tell me anything. One of the recruiters said she hates the word cyber. I also hate the word cyber. I hate the word cybersecurity. That's like I work in the medical field. Oh, really? Well, what do you do? I'm a brain surgeon. Or I work in the medical field. What do you do? Medical billing. Okay, those are very different things, and the same thing happens in cybersecurity. So I've mentored a lot of people before that say they want to do something in cybersecurity, and that's awesome. I need a little bit more specifics of what you want to do in cybersecurity so that my advice is helpful, right? Because I can give you advice, but it might not be helpful to you. So there's 52 job roles in the NICE cybersecurity framework, and that excludes several in addition to that. They don't specifically call out pen testing. They don't specifically call out cyber threat intelligence analyst in there. You could piece it together. So find what you're interested in and do that. If you were in Jack Daniel, his briefing, it's a lot better to do something you at least enjoy if you can't do something you love. So if you hate programming, I don't recommend studying programming, right? There's lots of other things you can do in cybersecurity that is at least something you don't hate, which is at least one step closer in the right direction to doing something you enjoy. So I don't think getting started in cybersecurity is particularly difficult. It does not require any first starting point. It does not require you to attend a paid-for boot camp. It does not necessarily require you to take college courses. All things are applicable. Go to the CTS, right? Have LinkedIn accounts. Somebody in the last cyber recruiting slide said he basically said he doesn't have Facebook and LinkedIn, so I don't know how he ever gets a job. But you need to actually proactively go out into the community, like you guys are already here today. But a lot of the junior people or people who are transitioning at a mid-career point into this field don't know how to get started. They haven't been told where to go, who to talk to, and what to do. So again, there's not necessarily wrong answers. In some cases, what people really need is a good mentor, and they have to proactively try and reach out and find people who are at least willing to help them overcome that little first hurdle of how do they get started and where do they go to. And so Google and YouTube, Cybrary, you can go down the whole list of free resources on the internet. I think Google has Code Academy. There's all sorts of things that are free that don't require you to outlay a lot of your own money to take 40-hour boot camps where I can't possibly teach you everything in a 600-page book in 40 hours. That's unrealistic. There are college courses. Maybe you're not going to do a degree program, but you can take through even online courses. A lot of this stuff is semester-long classes. So that might be a better way for you. You can combine some of these learning activities together, but you have to be proactive. Also, don't take a boot camp and think you're going to go to the boot camp and actually learn hands-on keyboard things. That almost never happens. I've instructed hundreds of boot camps. I don't have time in the boot camp to give you a lot of time in the labs because you have to pass the exam, right? So there are very few exceptions in the boot camp realm that we love and mostly hate. And people are sold a bill of goods when they sign up for the boot camps that's false. And I teach CEH. The EC Council labs are better than not having any labs. If you want to be a hacker and a pen tester, you're going to have to do that on your own. You have to have the intellectual curiosity to have some kind of lab, physical or virtual, on your own if that's the career goal you want. I've also mentored people who have said, well, I want to be a hacker, or I want to be a pen tester. That's awesome. I want to have a Ferrari. I'm not going to be able to do that in the next 6 months. It's commonly said that to be an expert in something requires 10,000 hours of whatever that is to be an expert. So because you took a 40-hour Sec Plus class and a 40-hour CEH class does not a pen tester make. Okay? So how do most pen testers get started? They hack stuff at home and take it apart. And then eventually, once they can put it back together again pretty regularly and have hundreds of hours of experience hacking and breaking things, then you start to be somebody that could potentially be hired for a job that is pen testing or hacking. Okay, so just a little tangent there. I also am brutally honest with people that I have mentored before. This may not be the field for everybody, but it's a really big field. So pen testing might not be the cybersecurity job for everybody. I know, because I briefly worked as one. That's not what I do now. Okay? So I also learned I don't like coding. So I currently work as a cyber threat intelligence analyst, which is an interesting mix of my intelligence experience, communication skills, and enough on the technical knowledge side to be able to combine all of those effectively. Okay? So there's lots of different job roles within cybersecurity, but as part of you jumping in or pivoting, whether you're in college or mid-career trying to pivot into cybersecurity, there's a place for you somewhere. Okay? So the most important thing I would say is find a mentor that is willing to actually talk to you on the phone. I think there's no other valuable thing that you can do for your own efforts to find that person. I actually had a guy. He was he wanted some mentoring. He took me out to dinner. I ate dinner. I drank some beers. All he did was write down everything I said. He didn't eat anything. He didn't drink anything. He just wrote down everything I said. I also then did my best to get him a job somewhere because somebody's going to hire him. He's going to be a rock star one day. And those are the kinds of efforts, if you're that person, I will do everything I can on your behalf because I know how valuable his intellectual curiosity is. There's no substitute for that sort of passion, right? And it doesn't matter which of those 52 cybersecurity job fields there is. I listen to cyber threat intelligence podcasts. I am my own type of cybersecurity nerd. It's just a little bit different than what the traditional one is. All right, so yeah, I don't go home and hack stuff. I go home and play video games and coach soccer, but I still listen to my cyber threat podcasts and follow the geopolitical realities of our world, which shape the threats that I have to be able to analyze and deal with. And then this comes up a lot. Well, how do I actually get my first job in cybersecurity? Whether you're new, college graduate, or maybe even an intern looking for your first internship, or mid-career. Again, I don't know that there's any one wrong or right answer for this. There's a lot of things that are helpful to know. Right. So some of this was alluded to in some of the other presentations today. The cyber recruiters talked about some of the federal or state requirements. So if you're trying to get a federal job, which I assume everybody is given where we work, and if you want a cyber job, a lot of these have DoD 8570 requirements, which means you have a certification. Now, that regulation is awful, and I can say that because I work for a DoD agency. I'm not allowed to tell you which one, but you can get my business card later. Because as most of these jobs, you're not actually a system administrator on those networks, which is actually what that regulation is for. But you could get a Sec Plus or CEH. CEH is probably the easiest exam to pass to get IAT Level 3 certification. And then you can check that box for you and for the people you're trying to apply for a job. A lot of people have grown into cybersecurity from an IT background, and I think that is obviously a path that makes a lot of sense. You understand the systems, you understand how they're configured and set up, which then hopefully means you would understand from a security perspective why they should be configured a certain way or how we should set them up a certain way from a security perspective. So I think if you're going to be a technical person in the cybersecurity field, having that underlying baseline knowledge of IT is really critical and fundamental. But there is nobody who can understand everything in IT. I know like one or two guys that probably know as much as anybody I've ever met, but everybody ends up specializing somehow because there's a lot to know. And then even the people that are specialized will, if they encounter a problem, will then figure it out, right? And that's where you go back to that intellectual curiosity. So you may be a VMware person or a Windows person or a Linux person, great, but you might also be at work and then have to suddenly deal with X. All right, and then that requires you to use all of those skills of why I don't know how to do that, but I could figure it out, right? We've all had that conversation with our family members because we fix all of their computers and phone issues, right? My mom always wants to know how I know everything. Google, right? It's not a complicated formula. How did you know that was going to work? Well, I didn't. If that didn't work, I would have tried the next thing that Google recommended, right? And also as part of the learning and intellectual curiosity is a lot of more junior people or students are afraid to make a mistake or break something. I have bricked a lot of Windows boxes. Those obviously were really critical processes I disabled. But again, that's part of the learning experience. If you're afraid that you're going to break something, well then technical hands-on field might not be for you if you can't get past that intimidation that, oh my God, what if I mess something up? Yes, welcome to cyber. Yes, everyone who has ever worked in this field hands-on has screwed something up, probably badly, at least on your home network. So again, from a mentoring perspective, sometimes we don't actually tell people that, right? But in no way is anybody who works in this field perfect. We've all made some kind of mistake. So those are just some things that I throw out there, sort of like, you want to put some stuff on your resume, maybe get past that 3 to 6 second screening they were talking about. Like, then go play with these open source tools. What is it that you want to do? You want to be a pen tester? Great. Most pen testers are probably going to start off as security researchers or vulnerability assessment personnel. Then you should probably understand Burp Suite and Nessus and maybe some OSINT tools as well. And then that gets you on that path. If that's not what you want to do, fine. Then there'll be some other things that you should probably research and play around with on your own. If you want to study forensics, well, there's open source forensics tools that you can play around with. It doesn't have to be like IDA Pro or really costly forensics tools, but you should probably be familiar with some of the open source tools so you can play around with it and then have some idea how that works. I absolutely recommend doing CTFs. I have done a couple of CTFs. Also learned probably pen testing is not for me. But I learned some really interesting, cool things. One of the guys asked me, at one point, he was like, I don't know how you managed to do that on a Windows box. Me neither. But I was able to solve the CTF questions in a way that they hadn't even thought of because they were Linux guys. So those are just some other tools that I really recommend that you can be familiar with. And you should be able to get all these slides later as well. I think the other important thing is you have to have a home lab if you're going to do this. I mean, if you want to be a policy person, okay, maybe not. But if you want to be technically proficient in whichever aspect of those 52 job roles, you have to practice at home. There has to be some kind of home lab. I mean, if you can't buy a used laptop on eBay for like $100 as a backup machine, then I don't know, again, that this is the field for you, which is a conversation I've had with someone, right? She only had the work computer. Thought that was pretty odd, right? Computers are pretty cheap nowadays. Build a desktop. Right, you could do that really cheaply and gain a lot of knowledge hands-on by doing that still. I'm trying to go through this pretty quick so I can take your questions. Based on if you were here for the recruiting panel, I immediately thought of my graphic there. All right, this is how you get your first job or pivot into cybersecurity. You got to have some skills. You have to proactively build a network of people who know you, and then you got to wait for the opportunity. So again, things for first jobs or trying to get into this, take a shift job. No one in this area wants to do shift work. Absolutely nobody. I will absolutely not do that job. All right, so those are the hardest ones in part to fill because nobody wants to do shift jobs. All right, but that's a good entry point. And okay, 6 months later, you can be back active in the job market again. Well, and then the question would be like, well, you were only there for 8 months. What happened? Well, it was shift work. Oh. Right? Again, it's not rocket surgery. If you have the chance and are interested in getting a security clearance, take any position you can to at least get the secret clearance. There are pros and many cons to having a security clearance. So again, if that is not something you're familiar with, I'm happy to give you a card, or you can email me and we can have a discussion about all of the cons and some of the pros with that. Okay? One of the cons is that China has my OPM file. Right? So there are some cons with that. There are certain things I can't do. I have to get international travel approved 30 days in advance, right? So there's pros and cons to having security clearances. I recommend it. So unless you really enjoy smoking weed, I really recommend if you're going to stay in this area, you try to do anything you can to get a security clearance. Join the reserves. Join the Air National Guard. Do whatever you can do to get a security clearance if you intend to work in the Washington, D.C. metro area and want to do cybersecurity. And also, all the really awesomely cool stuff generally happens at three-letter agencies, which was a panel discussion earlier today by a guy who I still don't know if we know his real name. Well, I got a question.
Well, I actually got a statement, because what I heard, and I didn't do this, and I wish I would have known to do it, is if you get a job as a security guard at the White House, 6 months later you got your TS.
Right. Take any job that can get you a security clearance. Right? It would just be general advice. Now, don't take a job you absolutely hate. You'll have all of these slides too, so there's a bunch of free learning material. I hear sometimes, well, cybersecurity training is expensive. And I'm thinking to myself, have you been on the internet? Like, have you Googled, Sec Plus? There's a ton of free stuff and free training out there. So the first Rob Mueller site is like an aggregation of sites of how to get into cybersecurity. There's all kinds of free training that's out there. So I linked some of what I thought was the best stuff, including my own, free training sites. It's just free. I'm going to give away 2 free sec books to whoever wants to run up here and rush the stage and knock this over then, because I have too many. So I'm happy to entertain your questions for the last couple of minutes we have. If you can ask them about cybersecurity, that'd be great. Good. I think you're first.
Yeah, can I have one of those books?
All right, we'll split it. So you can have the newer one, and you can have the older one, but most of the information is still the same. There you go. Yes.
Do you see an issue where people don't know where to focus on, and that really undercuts the conversation?
Well, it depends. If I'm mentoring somebody who's graduating from college with a computer science degree, which means they've never had a computer security class, then my recommendation, at least more than 90% of programs in the U.S. don't require you to take a computer security class for your 4-year degree. I'm at least going to expose them and to what the options are, and the NICE framework is a really easy place for that. But you still want some underpinning. So you might not have to go sit for the Sec Plus exam, but you should probably understand most of the core principles in those 2 books I gave away, right? Because they're not really changing, right? And we keep running into a lot of the same issues in cybersecurity, like please stop clicking phishing email links. Please use better password authentication mechanisms, right? So a lot of this stuff is still the source of our frustration, which is why we obviously need professional therapy. But I think the person that doesn't know needs to do a couple things: find a mentor, do some research on their own, before they, take all these programming classes and realize this is not for me. Yes?
All the different fields of cybersecurity.
Yeah, again, the NIST cybersecurity framework does a really good job of laying out a bunch of different things. They don't specifically have a pen test, and also it has a lot of DoD terminology. There's a cyber exploitation analyst. Some of that will only be done at Cybercom and NSA. But you can take a lot of those KSAs, and a lot of them will translate into pen testing type jobs. And there's not a really great one for cyber threat intelligence and analysis on that one. There's an all-source analyst and a threat analyst. because CTI is still kind of a very hybrid thing too. I think SANS is the only official course of note that actually has a cyber threat intelligence training that you can go to. It's 4578. Yes?
Can you describe a little bit about what you do as a cyber threat analyst? Because that's something I struggle with personally. Is some of these, I know what a pen tester is, but when it comes to like an analyst or researcher, I'm not quite sure what that.
Sure. So I mostly have been promoted to management. So what we generally see in cyber threat intelligence is a couple of different things. So, and if anybody saw Tim's briefing, that was amazing. That did a really good job about cyber threat intelligence. There's two things. There's actionable intelligence, so indicators that you can make a change to. So whether that's like a hash of malware or snort signatures, or something that you can put into a firewall or a SIM or whatever you have on your network, that's actionable. Stuff to block at your web proxies. And then there's more strategic level intelligence, which is really the contextual information. And both things are important. So you need actionable intelligence, so I know, these are threats in my industry or sector that my peer organizations or agencies are seeing right now. And you can get that sort of actionable threat intelligence from a whole variety of sources. And then you can block or blacklist or at least alert on actionable indicators of compromise, IOCs. And then there's the strategic intelligence that really gives you the background of, well, why are we being targeted, or who is targeting us, or why are they targeting us? And sometimes that is very sector specific. Sometimes it's tied into geopolitical events in the world. It depends on the threat actor that you are asking or performing strategic intelligence on, right? So there's a lot of criminal crimeware stuff, which is opportunistic. They want to make money. And nation-state threat actors have different motivations, and different nation-state actors have different motivations. And then there's just like everybody's being hit with scanning all of the time. And is that important? Is it relevant? Is it really threat? So you might be doing a lot of analysis on who is scanning you and what that may mean. What type of phishing emails are we currently seeing? Is it just like junk, garbage, crimeware? Is it really sophisticated? Some threat actors have very sophisticated phishing campaigns that are very targeted down to individuals right now, which is a whole different problem than crimeware phishing. So threat intelligence tries to look at both of those angles, both actionable and then the contextual or the strategic side as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes?
I know this is a little general, but what are some struggles or problems that you face just being, just having all those years of experience in cybersecurity?
I moved around quite a bit. So it took me a while to find a place that I really called home. So it actually, I landed as a Fed now, and I'm really happy with the agency and organization I'm with. But that was a struggle even for me, is to try to find my place within all of this. I took a job as a pen tester, and that job actually kind of went away, which was probably good for both me and the contracting company. And then I, with the same contracting company, I was doing counterintelligence cyber work. But then I moved on. So I would say it's not uncommon to move around a lot, and as long as you can explain it on a resume that makes sense, then you'll be okay. I think I'm out of time though, so if you want a card, I have a couple left. Happy to talk with you later.
We do have a coin for our presenters. So happy to give you that coin, brother. Good job.